Flat tire, full plate. The lug nuts clung with the tenacity of a seasoned miser. Leo groaned, wrestling with the stubborn tire iron. A blur of vehicles rushed past on the interstate shoulder, each gust threatening to topple Lily, who was assisting by meticulously arranging pebbles around his boots. "Sweetheart, maybe a little further back? Please?" He swiped at the perspiration beading on his forehead, leaving a streak of grime in its wake. "But Daddy, they're guarding you. They're a magic ring." Her voice held unwavering conviction, her small face creased with purpose. Leo exhaled. Arguing would only prolong the ordeal. He attacked the iron anew, the cold metal digging uncomfortably into his palms. New work gloves were a necessity. This marked the third roadside repair this month, another contortionist act beneath the bulky minivan. "Daddy, you okay? Your face looks funny." Concern laced Lily's question. "Couldn't be better, pumpkin. Couldn't be better." At long last, one nut yielded with a protesting screech that cut through the muggy air. Four remained. He checked his watch. Nearly 5. He was already running late to collect Mrs. Davison's precious poodle, Fluffy, and Lily had her heart set on crafting pizzas tonight. He could almost hear Sarah's ghost, a playful chiding echoing in his memory, always taking on more than you can manage, Leo. He yearned for her laughter, the way it used to animate the house. He longed for her sensible counsel, her steady hand guiding him through life's labyrinth. They had dreamed of their bakery, the sweet spot, Sarah's artistry in the ovens, Leo keeping the books. A fragrant haven of warmth and sugary delights. Now, the only thing baking was Leo, simmering under the relentless Florida sun. Another nut surrendered. He flung it into the hubcap with a sharp ping. Lily flinched. "Did you get a bad guy, Daddy?" "Something like that," he muttered, reaching for the jack. The whole undertaking felt like a looming shadow, a relentless pressure threatening to overwhelm him. The jack whined under duress, lifting the minivan by increments measured in agony. A familiar throb pulsed in his lower back, a constant reminder of his age and the relentless demands upon his energy. Finally, the punctured tire was free. He shoved it aside, leaving a dark smear on the asphalt. Lily's eyes tracked his movements, full of innocent curiosity. "What now, Daddy?" "Now," he said, retrieving the spare from the compartment, "we say a little prayer this one holds air." Straining, he hoisted the spare into place, aligning the bolts. The replacement was visibly aged, the tread worn smooth. It needed replacing soon. Another addition to the ever-growing roster of responsibilities. Tightening the nuts, a spark of satisfaction ignited within him. At least he was accomplishing something. At least he was getting something right. "All fixed," he declared, wiping his grimy hands on a tattered rag. "Pizza time." Lily erupted in applause, her face alight. "Yay! I'm making a pizza with rainbow sprinkles." Leo's lips curved into a smile. Rainbow sprinkles on pizza. Why not? A small triumph, a glimmer of light against encroaching shadows. He glanced at the horizon, where the sky was melting into hues of apricot and violet. He still faced a mountain of tasks, a demanding schedule stretching into the night. But for now, in this brief interlude, he had Lily, a mostly functional minivan, and the promise of pizza adorned with rainbow sprinkles. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was enough. Crash and rescue. The crimson blur of the sports car was gone in a heartbeat, a throaty roar echoing through the late afternoon quiet. Leo sighed, pulling Lily closer as a gust of wind ruffled her hair. "Show off," he muttered, already regretting the resentment that had laced his words. Then came the sound. Not just a crash, but a rending, tearing shriek of metal against metal, followed by a sickening crunch that made Leo's stomach clench. A plume of black smoke billowed into the sky, thick and acrid, staining the azure blue. "Stay here, Lily. Stay right here," Leo commanded, already sprinting towards the smoke. He didn't wait for her reply. The scene was chaotic. Twisted metal, shards of glass glittering like malevolent jewels scattered across the road, the pungent smell of gasoline hanging heavy in the air. The car, or what was left of it, was wedged against a tree, the front end crumpled like discarded paper. Flames licked at the wreckage, growing hungrier by the second. Someone was inside. He could hear a faint, muffled cry. Without hesitation, Leo yanked at the mangled door, the metal screeching in protest. It wouldn't budge. He kicked at the window, his work boots skidding uselessly on the safety glass. "Think, Leo, think." He spotted a heavy rock a few feet away. Adrenaline coursed through him as he smashed the rock against the window again and again, until finally the glass spiderwebbed and shattered. He reached inside, ignoring the searing heat, and fumbled for a seatbelt. It was jammed. Panic flared, but he forced himself to stay calm. He saw a glint of metal, a decorative clasp on the seatbelt. With trembling hands, he managed to undo the clasp. He pulled. A woman, still in a pristine white dress, tumbled into his arms. The dress was torn and stained with soot, her face pale and streaked with dirt. Even in this horrific scene, he registered the delicate lace, the intricate beading. "A bride. Can you walk?" he yelled over the crackling flames. She coughed, her eyes wide with terror. I think so." He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they stumbled away from the car. Each breath was a struggle, the smoke choking them both. They were only a few yards away when the car erupted in a ball of fire, the force of the explosion sending a wave of heat that scorched Leo's face. He shielded the woman with his body, pushing her to the ground. They lay there for a moment, coughing and gasping for air, the roar of the fire deafening. Finally, when he was sure the immediate danger had passed, he helped her up again. She swayed, disoriented. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She looked at him, her eyes filled with shock and disbelief. A single tear traced a clean path through the grime on her cheek. I was getting married," she whispered, her voice trembling. Then she looked at him directly. Do you believe in fairy tales?" Soot and silk. The silk of her wedding dress, once a pristine canvas of hope, was now a chaotic mess of gray and black streaks. It clung to her skin, heavy with the grime of the roadside and the lingering scent of burnt rubber. Clara sat on the verge, oblivious to the passing cars, the horns that blared in annoyance at the stalled traffic. Her gaze was fixed on a singed piece of lace that detached itself from the hem and danced on a stray breeze. Behind her, the skeletal remains of the limousine coughed up a final plume of black smoke. The acrid smell stung her nostrils, a constant reminder of the near miss, the chaotic scramble out of the wreckage. She touched her cheek, feeling the faint sting of a graze she hadn't even noticed until now. "It's gone," she whispered, the words lost in the rush of wind. She said it again, louder this time, the disbelief cracking in her voice. "It's all gone. The wedding. The meticulously planned seating arrangements, the imported orchids, the string quartet she'd insisted on despite her mother's protests about the cost. All reduced to ashes, both literally and figuratively." She pictured Charles, his perfectly sculpted hair and practiced smile. He'd be furious, of course. Furious about the delay, the inconvenience, the sheer mess of it all. Would he even care that she was all right? The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine, a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air. A tear traced a path through the soot on her face, leaving a clean, vulnerable streak. She scrubbed at it impatiently with the back of her hand, smearing the grime further. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Fairy tales weren't supposed to involve exploding cars and ruined dresses. They were supposed to be about princes and happily ever afters. But what if this wasn't a fairy tale gone wrong? What if it was a fairy tale averted? A narrow escape from a life she didn't truly want? She thought of the stranger who'd pulled her from the wreckage, his face etched with concern, his hands surprisingly gentle despite the urgency of the moment. He hadn't seen a bride, a socialite, a daughter of privilege. He'd seen a person in danger, and he'd acted. Clara closed her eyes, the image of his face imprinted on the back of her eyelids. He'd asked if she believed in fairy tales. At the time, she'd been too stunned to answer. Now, sitting on the side of the road, covered in soot and silk, she realized she didn't even know what a fairy tale was anymore. Maybe, just maybe, she was about to find out. A flower and a hero. Clara watched Leo disappear into the tool shed, the metallic clang of a dropped wrench echoing in the sudden quiet. She smoothed the non-existent wrinkles from her borrowed jeans, feeling acutely out of place amidst the overgrown garden and the chipped paint of the porch swing. Just as she was about to succumb to the urge to check her reflection in her phone screen, a small figure appeared at her side. Lily held out a single, vibrant purple wildflower, its petals trembling slightly in the breeze. "For you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Clara hesitated, then carefully took the flower. Its stem was short, almost comically so, but the bloom itself was perfect. "Thank you, Lily. It's beautiful." She inhaled its delicate fragrance, a world away from the expensive perfume she usually wore. Lily beamed, her eyes sparkling. "It's a vetch. Dad says they grow everywhere, but they're still special." She paused, then added, "My dad's a hero, you know." Clara raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Oh, really? What kind of hero?" She pictured Leo wrestling with rogue garden hoses or perhaps rescuing a kitten from a tree. "A real one," Lily insisted, her voice earnest. "He saved you. From the fire. He didn't even think about himself. He just ran in." She looked at Clara with an intensity that belied her age. "That's what heroes do." The flower suddenly felt heavy in Clara's hand. The memory of the heat, the smoke, the crushing metal slammed into her. She hadn't allowed herself to dwell on the specifics, focusing instead on the sterile safety of the hospital room. Now, faced with Lily's unwavering gaze, she couldn't avoid the truth. Leo had risked everything. Leo emerged from the shed, wiping his hands on a rag. He caught Clara's eye and offered a tentative smile. Later, as Leo fiddled with the sputtering engine of her borrowed rental car, Clara watched him from the porch. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, painting the scene in hues of orange and gold. She hugged herself, a sudden chill running down her spine despite the warmth of the evening. "Leo," she called out, her voice carrying on the still air. He straightened up, turning to face her. "Everything okay? Do you believe in fairy tales?" The question hung in the air, fragile and unexpected. Leo frowned, his brow furrowed in confusion. He glanced at Lily, who was drawing in the dirt with a stick, then back at Clara. "Fairy tales? Not really. Life's complicated enough without adding dragons and magic wands to the mix." He gave a self-deprecating chuckle. "Why do you ask?" Helped fairy tales. The aroma of pine needles, baked into the truck's heater vents by the afternoon sun, filled the cab. Clara stared out the window at the blur of snow-laden trees, her face pale. She hadn't spoken since they left the diner. Leo glanced at her, his jaw tight. He knew that look. It was the precipice before a fall. He pulled over onto a snow-packed shoulder. "Want to talk about it?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. She shook her head, but a single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. He handed her a crumpled napkin. "You know, fairy tales." He paused, searching for the right words. "They don't always happen the way you expect them to." Clara dabbed at her eyes. "Mine certainly didn't." Leo sighed, the sound heavy in the small space. "Mine neither. I always imagined I'd be further along. Big house, kids playing in the yard, Sarah still here to nag me about leaving my boots by the door." He rubbed a hand over his stubbled chin. The image flickered in his mind, sharp and painful, Sarah, laughing, her hand warm in his. He hadn't spoken her name aloud in weeks. "She sounds lovely," Clara whispered. "She was. Cancer. Took her too fast." He cleared his throat. "Point is, I had this whole story planned out, you know? And then life rewrites the ending. Sometimes it torches the whole damn book." Clara turned to him, her eyes red-rimmed but filled with a flicker of something, understanding, perhaps. "So, what do? You pick up the pieces. You find a new pen. And you start writing a different story." He looked out at the winter landscape, the stark beauty of the snow-covered forest. "Maybe," he said, turning back to her, "maybe fairy tales need a little help sometimes. A little intervention." "Intervention?" "Yeah. Like, maybe Prince Charming's horse throws a shoe halfway to the castle and someone needs to give him a ride. Or maybe the glass slipper shatters and someone needs to find a really good cobbler." He shrugged, feeling awkward but determined. "Maybe we can help them come true." He reached across the space between them and gently touched her hand. Her skin was cold. "Look, your fairy tale got derailed. Badly. But that doesn't mean you can't have a happy ending. It just might look different than you imagined." Clara squeezed his hand, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "A different kind of fairy tale?" "Exactly. One where the princess saves herself. And maybe," he added, a warmth spreading through him, "maybe finds a friend along the way to help her rebuild her castle. Cozy haven." The rain had softened to a drizzle, slicking the cobblestones as Leo guided Clara towards their building. Lily skipped ahead, her bright yellow raincoat a beacon in the muted light. Clara, still trembling slightly, clung to Leo's arm. Each step felt unsteady, her expensive heels clicking awkwardly against the uneven path. "It's not much, but it's home," Leo said, his voice rough around the edges. He fumbled with the keys, the metal cold against his palm. The building was old, its brick facade weathered by years of rain and wind, but it had a certain charm. Ivy climbed its walls, softening the harshness of the stone. Inside, the scent of cinnamon and something baking hung in the air, a comforting contrast to the lingering smell of smoke and gasoline. The apartment was small, barely 2 rooms, but it pulsed with a palpable warmth. Books lined the walls, their spines worn and familiar. Knitted blankets were draped over the mismatched furniture. A half-finished painting leaned against the wall, vibrant colors swirling across the canvas. It was a world away from the sterile perfection of the wedding venue. Clara ran a gloved hand over a worn, velvet cushion. "It's cozy," she managed, surprised by the sincerity in her own voice. Lily, who had been watching her with wide, empathetic eyes, tugged on her sleeve. "You're all wet. You'll catch a chill. I have some clothes you can borrow." "They're a little flowery," she admitted, wrinkling her nose, "but they're dry." Clara looked down at her ruined dress, the silk clinging uncomfortably to her skin. The image she'd carefully cultivated, polished, perfect, untouchable, was shattered, replaced by this bedraggled, pathetic figure. A tear escaped and traced a path through the smudged remains of her makeup. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She hadn't realized how much she craved simple kindness, a genuine offer of help without strings attached. Lily beamed, her eyes sparkling. "Come on. I'll show you." She led Clara to a small bedroom, its walls plastered with drawings and posters. A kaleidoscope of colors and textures assaulted Clara's senses, yet it felt freeing. Lily rummaged through a chest of drawers, pulling out a soft, cotton dress covered in a riot of floral patterns. "Here. It's got a little ruffle at the bottom," she said, holding it up for inspection. Clara took the dress, her fingers brushing against the soft fabric. It was the antithesis of everything she usually wore, everything she thought she wanted. But in this moment, surrounded by the warmth of this humble haven, it felt like exactly what she needed. A chance to shed the weight of expectation, to unravel the tightly wound threads of her carefully constructed life, and maybe, just maybe, find something real underneath. "Backyard wedding. Let's have a wedding," Lily announced, kicking her legs against the kitchen island. Leo, mid-pour of instant coffee, nearly scalded his hand. What now?" "A pretend one. For Clara. She never got her real one, did she?" Lily's eyes, wide and earnest, pleaded with him. "We could do it in the backyard. It'll be fun." Leo sighed. He was exhausted, the adrenaline from the crash having long since faded, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. But looking at Lily's hopeful face, he couldn't refuse. "A pretend wedding, huh? Well, I suppose we could raid the attic for those old Christmas lights. And maybe we could find some flowers." Lily squealed, hopping off the stool. "I'll get my fairy wings." The attic raid, as Leo called it, yielded more than just Christmas lights. They unearthed dusty lace curtains, a box of pastel-colored streamers left over from Lily's 7th birthday, and a chipped porcelain doll that Lily declared would be the flower girl. Leo even found a forgotten bolt of white fabric which he decided could serve as a makeshift aisle runner. He found himself strangely invigorated by the project. Lily, buzzing with excitement, directed him with the precision of a seasoned wedding planner. "More purple there, Daddy. And the lights need to twinkle more." The backyard transformed. Leo, channeling some dormant creative energy, strung the Christmas lights between the branches of the ancient oak tree, casting a warm glow on the makeshift altar, a small, weathered garden bench. Lily, meanwhile, was busy arranging wildflowers she'd picked from the overgrown edges of the yard into a surprisingly elegant bouquet. She fastened the streamers to everything that would hold still, creating a festive, if slightly haphazard, atmosphere. The white fabric, carefully laid out, led from the back door to the bench, promising a journey, however brief, into something special. He caught Clara watching them from the window, a small smile playing on her lips. Her eyes were less guarded than they had been, less shadowed. Leo felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of purpose that extended beyond bills and school lunches. He straightened a crooked streamer. "Almost ready for the bride," he muttered, more to himself than to Lily. Lily skipped over and tugged on his shirt. "What song should we play, Daddy? For when Clara walks down the aisle?" Leo paused, considering. "How about, 'Here Comes the Sun'?" He looked at Lily, his expression softening. "Seems fitting, doesn't it? Change of heart." A lingering haze of singed lavender and char hung in the air, an odd olfactory backdrop for a wedding. Clara perched precariously on a rickety garden chair Leo had resurrected from the depths of the shed, observed Lily crowning a motley crew of stray dogs with wildflowers, their tails thumping a tentative rhythm against the grass. Soot marred her once immaculate white gown, and rebellious tendrils had escaped the confines of her elaborate updo. The crunch of tires on gravel heralded Ethan's arrival in a sleek black car. He emerged, an epitome of sartorial elegance in his dark suit, a bouquet of lilies cradled in his arm. Disbelief etched itself onto his features as he surveyed the scene, the skeletal remains of the gazebo, a makeshift altar constructed from reclaimed materials, the assemblage of guests, Leo's neighbors, their expressions a mixture of worry and intrigue. He appeared utterly adrift. Clara pushed herself to her feet, her legs unsteady beneath her. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice barely audible. Relief washed over his face as he hurried toward her. "Clara, what happened? I saw the smoke. Are you hurt?" He reached out then hesitated, seemingly unsure how to engage with her disarray. She recoiled slightly. I'm unscathed. But everything is different now. The smile withered on Ethan's face. Different? What do you mean? He made a sweeping gesture encompassing the backyard. Is this still happening? Yes, Clara affirmed, her voice gaining resolve. But not as we envisioned. She cast a look at Leo, who hovered near the grill, adeptly flipping veggie burgers. I almost died back there, Ethan. All I could think about was how detached I'd become. From everything. From you. A frown creased his brow and the lilies drooped further in his grasp. Detached? Clara, we've spent months orchestrating this wedding. It was all meticulously planned. Meticulously planned, she repeated, a bitter tang on her tongue. That's the crux of the matter, Ethan. It revolved solely around appearances. The dress, the venue, the guest list, none of it resonated with authenticity. None of it felt truly us. She indicated the small gathering, Lily carefully placing a floral wreath on a scruffy terrier. This resonates. This feels grounded in something genuine. Ethan's shoulders sagged. So, what are you saying? Clara inhaled deeply, the acrid air catching in her throat. I can't marry you, Ethan. Not today. Not ever. Because I realized I deserve a love that transcends appearances and societal expectations. I deserve a connection with the incandescent intensity of a wildfire. He gazed at her, truly saw her, perhaps for the first time. He noticed the grime on her face, the untamed quality of her hair, but he also registered an inner resilience previously masked by designer clothes and carefully calculated smiles. A glimmer of understanding dawned in his eyes. He drew closer, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. I understand, he murmured, his voice unexpectedly gentle. Perhaps perfection isn't the panacea we believe it to be. His gaze swept across the chaotic scene, a tentative smile gracing his lips. Maybe there's a certain beauty here. He deposited the lilies on a nearby table, ambled over to Leo, and inquired, Need some help with those burgers? The fairy tale ending. Backyard barbecue? Clara managed, disbelief cracking the veneer of her composure. Smudged coal ringed her tired eyes, betraying the careful mask she usually wore. Ethan squeezed her hand, a surprisingly strong gesture. Something smaller, more real. Just us, Leo, Lily. Perhaps a few cherished faces. We can still be married today, Clara. Just reimagined. Her gaze flicked from Ethan's imploring face to the lingering pandemonium. A bridesmaid's stifled sobs. A caterer's desperate salvage operation. The elaborate fantasy she'd meticulously crafted lay in ruins. A wreckage of satin and disappointed dreams. But in the depths of Ethan's eyes, she glimpsed a sincerity absent from the mirrored ballroom. Okay, she breathed, the single syllable a liberation compared to her rehearsed vows. Okay, let's. Leo's backyard was a canvas splashed with the vibrant hues of late summer. Lily, practically vibrating with delight, had fashioned whimsical posies from wildflowers adorning the time-worn picnic table that would serve as their altar. Sleeves rolled, Ethan assisted Leo in draping festoon lights through the boughs of a venerable oak, their gentle luminescence warding off the encroaching dusk. Clara, barefoot and clad in a borrowed ivory dress, discovered an unexpected tranquility. The ceremony, abbreviated and profoundly moving, possessed a raw, unvarnished beauty. Lily recited a self-penned poem, stumbling adorably over certain stanzas, yet imbuing each line with unwavering passion. Ethan's vows eschewed promises of material wealth or ostentation, instead pledging steadfast support and a shared life rooted in authenticity. When Clara spoke, a slight tremor in her voice revealed her initial anxieties, her craving for a love that transcended mere spectacle. As they exchanged simple silver bands, Clara caught Leo observing them from the porch, a subtle shift playing across his features. The worried lines bracketing his eyes appeared to soften, replaced by a nascent glimmer of hope. Later, as the small gathering shared pizza on humble paper plates, peals of laughter punctuated the twilight air. Lily, perched on Leo's knee, captivated them with outlandish tales of sylvan sprites and articulate squirrels. Drawing Clara near, Ethan murmured promises of a future filled with quiet intimacies and interwoven aspirations. Leo watched, the scene wavering slightly behind a veil of unshed tears. He witnessed not merely a marriage, but the genesis of a family, a bond forged in the crucible of unforeseen circumstances. He saw compassion and fortitude, an unwavering conviction in the redemptive power of second chances. Perhaps, he mused, fairy tales weren't confined to gilded palaces and princely suitors. Perhaps they resided in the discovery of love and optimism in the most unassuming of settings, in the simple act of embracing joy amidst the turmoil. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Leo dared to entertain the notion that perhaps, just perhaps, he too was worthy of a storybook ending.